upon hit upon hit. So you know what we did? The Attorney General had to be inventive. He turned Tetron into a prison and Stobles into a prison. And now all of a sudden, no hits. No hits. The murder rate's gone down. Why you all couldn't think of that? So the achievement of the SOE is that not only that we prevented murders on a mass scale, but by getting these preventative detention orders, we save lives by half, by almost half, 42%. And let me dispel something, because they are going to say the SOE was not effective. It was, and they are going to say why people were not charged. Let me tell you why. If the evidence we are depending on to charge them would be intercepts of hearing them talking about who they're going to kill and when to kill, where to kill, and all that. And we have preventative detention orders that now prevent them from killing, then the evidence dries up. Now we are deprived of the evidence, but what we've done, the balancing act is, depriving us of the evidence enabled us to save lives. So let me go through, because I promised I would go through some of the safeguards in the bill. Now, objects of the Act. The objects are set out. I don't need to regurgitate them. But right in Section 5, you see several times that the arrest without warrant has to be on the basis of reasonable suspicion. Reasonable suspicion is not only a common law, but a constitutional safeguard to prevent unlawful arrest or arbitrary arrest. Now, what they did not tell you is that the present law, if you want to say that is a constitutional breach, the present law in Trinidad and Tobago allows for arrest without warrant already. There are certain situations in which the police can arrest you without a warrant. But it is quite clear here that there must be reasonable suspicion that you have committed an offense, that you are in the process of committing an offense, or that you are about to commit an offense. And only in those situations, the police would arrest you. So this scare tactic the previous speaker went into about, you know, you're going to work and they're going to arrest you. Our old auntie going to clean the house in Westmoreland, she leave from Gandhi, and she come out of the zone, they're going to arrest you. They wouldn't arrest you unless they have reasonable suspicion that you, auntie, hiding guns. There must be reasonable suspicion. Oh God, the whole thing in purple, because there's reasonable suspicion and safeguard upon safeguard. 6, where there are reasonable grounds to believe that there is rampant criminality, such as murder, gang warfare, or high or escalating levels of crime. So the declaration of the zone is not arbitrary. It is based on reasonable grounds set out in Section 6. 6.2, an order made under subsection 1. It basically specifies the time period. It's a very short time period. When it goes on to there's parliamentary scrutiny at 6.3, an order made under this section shall be subject to affirmative resolution of Parliament as opposed to negative, because we all know what happened with the negative resolution, don't we? There was a negative resolution where they could have stood up and argued against the doubling of the fines, but laziness, one of the 7 deadly sins, seemed to be running through the PNM, and they missed the boat, and now we had to come here today and try to give people a reprieve. And you are saying, they came here to say, we stood up to save the people of Trinidad and Tobago, when you had the opportunity to do it before. affirmative resolution is here. Safeguard.
Would you like your additional 15 minutes?
Not much of it, but yes. Thank you. Revocation by the Honorable Prime Minister on her own motion on the recommendation of the CDS or the Commissioner of Police, where she deems it is necessary or where there's a basis for doing so. That's a safeguard. So it doesn't go on indefinitely. The rank of the officers inserted right here and the written accountability, all under Section 10, safeguard, safeguard after safeguard. Every zone shall have written accountability and reporting systems, safeguard, disciplinary action, safeguard. And here what the previous speaker wanted us to do, say exactly what the disciplinary action must be. I have never seen that in any legislation because there already exist standing orders for breaching people's rights or breaching orders, standing orders in the Trinidad and Tobago Defense Force, standing orders in the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. Right. Next one. Method of identification. That's another safeguard under Section 13. Section 14 with respect to the coding. Let me go. Again, right here, search and seizure without a warrant. And you know what the statute says? That the search or seizure without a warrant must be on the basis of reasonable suspicion that an offense is in the course of being committed, or has been committed, or is about to be committed. If your property is seized, right here, the standing right here, they basically give you an opportunity to go before a magistrate and make representations as to why your property should be returned. That's access to the courts. Is that not a safeguard? You cannot seize tools of trade or business, documents subject to legal professional privilege. That's safeguards. The handling of property seized, how you can keep it, the grounds for keeping it, and so on. Right here, again, safeguard. If it can no longer assist, it has to be returned. It stipulates how and the process for doing so, the application before a magistrate, safeguard. Everything here, this whole page, page 15, safeguards. The minute you are arrested or detained in the zone on the basis of reasonable suspicion, you are immediately brought before a magistrate. That's a court. That's a safeguard. The magistrate can then order your detention if she is satisfied there are reasonable grounds for doing so. That's a safeguard. If she is not so satisfied, she releases you. Is that not a safeguard? If she doesn't release you, you can go before a judge in chambers, and the judge will determine whether your detention is lawful and reasonably necessary. That's a safeguard. This is akin to when you get arrested and you go before a magistrate and you get blanked, you go before a judge in chambers. We said that out here. Safeguard. So it's not as if my friend who spoke before me would have you believe that you'll get arrested, you go down a rabbit hole, and we wouldn't see you for 180 days. It's not that at all. Once you get arrested, you are promptly brought before a magistrate, and if you are not, there are also mechanisms for senior officers to ensure that you are, and then if the magistrate says you have to stay, a judge can determine if the magistrate was right or wrong. Safeguard. Those who, to deal with what they say, that what criminals do when they hear that they come into lockdown the zone, they move to a next zone. Well, right here in the bill deals with that. So that if you are moving to a next zone, and maybe you happen to get outside of the zone where you are supposed to be, and running to a next zone, you can't come and say, well, all it was too slow. I done outside the zone, so you can't arrest me. It says, in essence, if you are fleeing the zone, you are subject to the zone. Right. It's spelled out. Access to a lawyer, what you have access to medical attention, all of these things are spelled out whilst you are detained. That you have a right to food, medical attentions, all of this. Body cams to be used, that's a safeguard. I heard someone earlier make reference to the deactivation of the body cams and so on. We all know, those who practice criminal law, that people who are providing information do not like to talk on camera. That's one of the instances where, at the request of the person, it would be lawful to turn off the body cam. I've seen many cases where people would prefer, they'll give their statement, even when they're going to be charged, they'll give a confession statement. They're bold because they know they can challenge it in court. But the minute the camera comes out, nobody talks on camera. All of these protectional safeguards exist right here in the bill. Again, for those who feel that there could be abuses, I don't know on what basis they say that we should be afraid of the defense force because they are trained for war and they would kill indiscriminately and all that. We've had several SOEs. For decades, have they ever killed anybody? You all call SOE. You all didn't think of that the soldiers would have killed people? Or you're just coming to make that up now as a scare tactic? That is all that is. Because there's no basis for saying that the soldiers would kill you just so. And in any event, another safeguard, right in the bill, section 24, ballistic signature at the Forensic Science Center, so that we can track who used what bullet to shoot who, if that happens. We've gone to great lengths. We've looked at the other models. We've looked at Jamaica. And you know, the students' companions say that wise men learn from the mistakes of others. Thankfully, the Jamaicans went first. They had their teaching problems. They had all of their issues. We've looked at it, and we've refined our bill so that we do not make the mistakes they made. We anticipate that there would be teaching problems, obviously. We anticipate that there would be resistance. We anticipate that when we go down to lockdown CLATs, the all your wicked woman will come out. All your wicked, we expect her to come out. Because the one thing, you know, it's a trademark in Trinidadian society. And you see it with the fines. You know, the one thing is, everybody wants law and order. Everybody wants the murder rate to go down. Everybody wants the roads to be safe. But when you put things in place to alter behaviors to make sure that it is safe, they have a problem with it. Yeah, the law is for everybody else but them. So, and that is what is happening in our country now. We have a small criminal class who believe that the rule of law does not apply to them. And we have come, it is our mandate, we've come to say the rule of law applies to everybody, including the PNM and their followers. But this bill is two-pronged. This bill is two-pronged. I didn't get to say all what I wanted to say, but I want to make this point that this bill is two-pronged because I heard two senators in a previous debate stand your ground lamenting about the bill does not treat the root causes of crime. So clearly, and I realize that in this parliament, a lot of people do not know that in treating the root causes of crime, you generally cannot use legislation. What you can use legislation to do is to treat the proximal causes of crime. And you treat the proximal causes of crime in the short term and the medium term. What are proximal causes? Guns kill, guns loaded with bullets kill. People who like to use guns with bullets kill. So you either remove ammunition so you have a gun that doesn't fire. So if you get all the ammunition off the street, you get rid of a proximal cause. If you get the guns and the ammunition off the street, they'll have to go back to Bottle Fight and Big Stone. That's a proximal cause. If you reduce the manpower, these select few people who feel they are above the law and recruiting people, you treat with a proximal cause. And this bill goes further with the committee that was set up that the previous speaker tried to make fun of. If you look at the bill and you look at the Social Transformation Committee, who it consists of and what they are required to do, they are mandated to assess the conditions in the zone, physical infrastructure, health, environment, land tenure, identify threats within the zone, factors that are hindering sustainable development in the zone, and they are mandated to create a sustainable development plan for persons in the zone to ensure equality of opportunity in terms of education, health, economic growth, to provide interventions, to ensure compulsory school attendance. I'm sure, do they know that there are persons in Grandy who have no money to go to school? They have no money. They live in hand-to-mouth. In fact, some from certain zones can't pass by other zones to go to school. That's where we have reached to. Coordination to see how we can implement these social interventions. This is part of the second pronged part of the bill, the Social Transformation Committee. So it's not that we are going in and making war with the criminals. We have to. They're at war with us, and we are going to show them that we are at war with them. The criminal elements, whether they vote red or yellow or whoever they vote for, we are going for them. And when we go for them, the people who they have advantage, the people whose children they force to smoke weed and then to smoke coke and then to go and rob and then to go and rape and home invade and murder, we are going to deprive the criminal networks and the criminal gangs, we are going to deprive them of manpower. You know how? We are going to root out the heads and put them away for a long time. And the young people coming up, they are no longer going to look at the gang leaders as people who they should idolize and follow after. We are going to ensure with these social interventions that they have clothes to wear to go to school, shoes to wear, that they have the books, that they have lunch when they go to school, that they are fed in the morning, they have breakfast, and that they can go to a homework center in the evening. We are going to ensure that they are sustainable jobs, not URP jobs that are being managed by the criminal element. And that is, I want to take this opportunity to thank the Honorable Prime Minister for taking that bold step, which was one of our crime initiatives, very early to get rid of that URP program. Because not only it was ghost, imagine you have to go and work, and the criminal who doesn't work, you have to give him half or 75% of your salary while you work and he does nothing. Those days have come to an end. The rule of law, when we are finished at Trinidad and Tobago, the rule of law will prevail. So you could cry, you could oppose, you could get on bad, you could find every excuse why it wouldn't work. We intend to wage war against the criminal element, and we will be victorious. We are confident. Madam Speaker, let me end by saying we are confident. We know that we will win because we are confident in the victory of good over evil. I thank you.
Thank you, Member for Toko Sandy Grande. Member for St. Anne's East.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Madam Deputy Speaker, it is a privilege to rise in the House, albeit it's 2:32 a.m., to contribute to such an important debate as we speak about this piece of legislation. I want to start by saying that it is indicative of the way the government operates. Just like when they brought the increase in fines, the draconian increase in fines, in that they just sprung upon the population on the night of Christmas. At this hour of the morning, when the population, most of the population is asleep, we are here to debate such an important piece of legislation that will have an impact on so many thousands of people in this country. And the government saw it fit that this is the time that we should be here to discuss that, when the population that should be given scrutiny to this discussion is in their bed and not able at this time to pay attention. So I want to condemn that first move of the government again, because it is, again, sleight of hand in bringing legislation, and that will impact the lives of the citizens, and doing it in a way that the citizens don't have the opportunity to scrutinize. I want to summarize the contribution of the last speaker, the member for Toko Sandy Grande. I want to use a quote that he said, and I'm quoting him verbatim, to express how I felt, and I think most of us felt, about his contribution. He said, "I heard so much nonsense, I could not believe it." And that properly and accurately summarizes a lot of what he said. Imagine at 2:34 discussing a serious piece of legislation that will affect so many thousands. We have to be hearing about fixtures, bringing to mind the element of photographs that we have seen all over social media with fixtures in Superman outfits, Madam Deputy Speaker. In a serious discussion, I heard so much nonsense, I could not believe it. We have to stay here at this hour debating serious legislation to hear another minister stand to speak about the crime plan, one who has a penchant for blowing in bags, to speak about crime going down in his constituency, the constituency of Tunapuna, because he talked to the youth man and them. So clearly, the crime plan we here discussing, because this is part of the crime plan, we didn't need to do this. Because if all they needed to do was go and speak to your constituents, then the crime should be over in Trinidad and Tobago. We are here this hour discussing that, and that is a serious contribution coming from the member for Tunapuna. And of course, we are here to hear that regardless of all of the work done over the years, especially since our students came back from COVID and that whole 2-year experience when they were home, that traumatic experience, and all of the things put in place, increasing the number of school social workers, increasing the number of guidance counselors, after-school lessons in all of our 80 primary schools, singling out 106 schools, giving them more resources, putting learning resource assistants in the schools to give them more supervision so that they don't have time on their hands to play the fool. All of that was done, and the UNC will want us to believe that they came and put police in schools, in 50 schools, in less than a year, and all the school violence finished, giving no credit to all the work that was done before. Again, I heard so much nonsense. I could not believe it, Madam Deputy Speaker. I could not believe it. At this hour of the morning. But you see, we also have to be listening to protests, and it reminds me of when people say, "Thou dost protest too much," because we are bringing legislation that has its root in something that happens in Jamaica. But we are not considering, or they know, but they don't want us to believe that it is something different. Jamaica's society is much more homogeneous in terms of race than Trinidad and Tobago's. And by trying to keep putting and saying we're not going to, there's no race going to be involved, by the very nature of our society, there will be geographic discrimination. There will be people of a particular race who are more affected, and that is a fact. Thou dost protest too much. Speaker after speaker standing here to try to pretend as though there will be no effect on race or geography. And that, Madam Deputy Speaker, is just not so. When I leave here at this hour tonight, I go home to Sunshine Avenue in San Juan. I grew up in a hotspot area, and I still live there. And therefore, yes, that's my MP there. And so therefore, I want to represent not just the feelings of my own family and my own community, but also the feeling of my constituency of St. Anne's, which is why, even at this hour, I cannot sit down. I have to stand and represent the interests of my constituency and my community. The member for Tokos and Grandi spoke about children not having money to go to school and not being able to go. After you fire 30,000, more than 30,000 people in vulnerable communities, you will stand to say that? Again, I heard so much nonsense, Madam Deputy Speaker. I could not believe it. I hope the member for Tokos and Grandi also knows that there are communities such as the one I live in. When I was doing SCA, the teachers were telling me I went to school in San Juan SDA. They were telling me, put a different address on your SCA slip because there is geographic discrimination even in that time. There was. So when you now denote communities, zones of special operation, what do you expect for the people in that community and how they will feel, and for more of that geographic discrimination to take place? I want to bring to your attention, I grew up that in Sunshine Avenue, San Juan. I still live there. And people who grow up in areas that are depressed areas or areas that are low socioeconomic areas, when they remain in those communities, it is a powerful statement to those who are still there. It gives inspiration to children living in those communities that they can also aspire and they can also attain. When you do something like this, the effect that will have for many people is that they will seek to move out of those communities into communities where they feel their children and their families will not be discriminated against. That will remove that element of inspiration from inside of these communities. So don't tell me it will have no effect. Don't tell me that it will not affect these communities negatively when you denote them as these zones. And don't tell me that people like myself who are law-abiding will not be affected if my community is denoted a zone, because I will also be a part of the many law-abiding citizens in the community who will be affected by the few. So don't act as though it is foolishness to say that. Many of you can act that way because you don't live in these communities, but I do. I am not going to be long, but I'm going to speak about the Social Transformation Committee because, you see, there are enough reports.
Madam Deputy Speaker, on a point of order, Standing Order 53, 1, F and G. Madam Deputy Speaker.
F, G. Okay. Government bench. Let's let the members speak in relative silence, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Sadam, let the constituents speak in peace. Speaking on your constituents' behalf, too. Madam Deputy Speaker, I want to speak about Section 5. And I want to speak about putting the cart before the horse. And I want to speak about putting the most important part of the legislation at the bottom of it, giving it the least attention and making it the most vague part of it. You see, when we are speaking about the crime plan, it is one thing to deal with the punitive, and a lot has been said about the punitive in this legislation, but the transformative aspect of it, which is dealt with in just clause 25 and then in a bit in the schedule, and even being dealt with this in the Social Transformation Committee, it is vague. It has been brought to the attention before of how large the committee is. It is very vague how many people can be on the committee. There's no funding, and I want to deal with that aspect because, you see, I've been a minister for 10 years. So I understand that you could put whatever on a piece of paper. If you have nothing in place to fund anything, then it is all just cosmetic. Look at this. In clause 25, it speaks about what the committee shall do: assess conditions within the zone, develop a sustainable development plan, recommend social interventions, coordinate the implementation of social intervention programs. with what money? This is something that just came out of the blue. We are in the middle of a budget cycle. We are already seeing the government floundering with respect to monthly payments, all late, grants, late, pensions, late. Yes, if you're not an MP, maybe I don't know, but my constituents keep speaking to me about these things. I'm not lying, right? We're already seeing that tutor can't get their back pay. We're seeing that the 10% that was promised has been kind of half paid and still not paid properly. Promise made, promise not kept. So we are seeing definite issues with money. So therefore, this assessment plan and that development plan, where is the money going to come from? And in addition to that, it takes time. It takes time to develop these things. And if you have the zone being noted in 6 months, are you trying to tell me that in 6 months you are going to develop an assessment plan and implement it? You have no money assigned. You have a very, very vague and large-looking committee that we know is non-productive. So really, who are you trying to fool by putting this on this paper, pretending as though you're going to transform somebody when you have no money and no real plan to do it? This is all about the punitive. And a crime plan cannot be centered on the punitive. It must be centered on the transformative. And that is why the Minister of Education is now reaping the benefits of the transformative work done for the past couple of years to change school violence. And therefore, this plan that is here before us, it is going to have a racial effect, it is going to increase the geographic discrimination, and it is going to affect very severely the lives
Tedious repetition,
of many.
tedious repetition, tedious repetition.
Superman.
Standing order 48-1.
Standing order 48-1. 48-1 is related to relevance. Member, I believe you have also already spoken about this, so I ask you to continue, please.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I wish for a clarification. I am speaking about the geographic discrimination that will be imposed upon the people of my community based on this. This is my contribution.
Member, you have been speaking about that for about 15 minutes.
Deputy Speaker, I have been speaking about punitive versus transformative. I've been speaking about education and what we have done, which is why the transformative has helped, and now police in school is getting the benefit of that. I've been speaking about children who have no money to go to school because the government has fired their parents, the 30,000 people. I've been speaking
this contributes to the repetition. I've heard you, and you said it just a short while ago. So I ask you to move on, please.
Yes, thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. So as I was making my contribution about the fact that the Special Transformative Committee is vague, there is not enough detail here, there is no funding to afford any of the plans that are written here to be implemented, and I am saying that this means that this is simply cosmetic, and what is going to happen is that it's going to have a punitive effect on these communities, including the community in which I live, and therefore we as the opposition are saying that we cannot support this bill, we cannot support what will be a discriminating bill against the people of our communities, including myself who lives in a community like this, and we are saying that we have made certain suggestions. One, that this can go to consultation with even a joint select committee. We are saying that even a consultation with the public would be very useful to hear and get some information about how this is going to affect persons. That is very important, very critical. And I am here representing St. Anne's and speaking about what St. Anne's needs, and they have put me here to do that, Madam Speaker, and I will make sure to do that. I'm also representing the community that lies in Barataria Stand 1, because that's where I live. And Madam Deputy Speaker, it is very, very difficult to sit and to hear persons who are not living in these communities contribute as though they are, because it is clear that not enough thought has been given to how this will really affect the lives of the citizens, the law-abiding citizens who live in these communities. So, Madam Deputy Speaker, I thank you for the opportunity and the privilege which I have been elected to do, which is to contribute on a bill as important as this, even at 2:48 a.m. in the morning. Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker.
Honorable Attorney General.
Sit down.
Members, I am on my legs. Member, I am on my legs. Please sit down. I request all members, please sit down, and I need silence in the chamber right now. Silence, please. I am asking for silence from everyone here, and I am on my legs right now. Both of you did get up. The Attorney General got up just a little bit before you.
Madam,
I would like to invoke Standing Order 52-1, page 32 for clarification of all.
Madam Deputy Speaker, we've been here for, is it 14 hours? And just about 14 hours today. I'd just like to remind the House, we're just hoping that some of us might slip out. I'd just like to remind the House, Madam Deputy Speaker, of the bill that I rose about 6 hours ago to...
Members,
Thank you.
We have been here for 14 hours. This is very unnecessary. Please do not disrespect the chamber. Please do not disrespect me. Please let the Attorney General finish his closing statement.
I thank you so much. Madam Deputy Speaker, the bill that I rose to pilot this, well,
Madam Deputy Speaker, the member for Diego Martin Northeast is using obscene, insulting language in the chamber.
yes.
For a very seasoned politician.
Okay. Member for Diego Martin
48-4.
North. There is a manual.
I can tell you what I said. I said, don't point up the Deputy Speaker like that is your daughter. Go home and do that. Go home and do that. Go home and do that. Don't do that here.
There is a manual on the House of Representatives. If you turn to the middle page in that manual, there is a table with words that are not allowed in this House. That word is not in the table. I ask you to refer to that manual, member. I would ask you to withdraw what you said and apologize.
I apologize and withdraw.
Honorable Attorney General.
Madam Deputy Speaker, for the third time, when I rose to pilot the bill before the House about 7 hours ago, I had read the long title of the bill. Just for the benefit of my colleagues, the long title is that this is an act to provide for special measures. Now, I just want to repeat that, just in case some of us did not hear. An act. It's an act. Okay? This is not the Constitution. It's an act to provide for special measures for upholding and preserving the rule of law, public order, citizen security, and public safety within certain geographically defined areas of Trinidad and Tobago and for other related matters. That's the long title of the act that is before us. Now, right away, beginning with my distinguished colleague, Senior Counsel, Mr. Scotland, the representative for Port of Spain South, and continuing thereafter, because Mr. Scotland stands above most of his colleagues in terms of his position on the bench. But Mr. Scotland carried me straight to a case. And the case was the case from Jamaica. On purpose, I did not go to that case. You know why? Because that case is a case on a constitutional provision. And that provision is analogous to Section 8 of the Trinidad and Tobago Constitution. That is an exercise that we are in right now, and which was before the court, not the Court of Appeal, the court in Jamaica, a full court, 3 judges, not the Court of Appeal. Now, Section 8 of the Trinidad Constitution, it's not an act per se. It's the Constitution. As all the constitutions in the region do, Section 8 is a provision which deals with states of emergency. What does it say? It says, subject to this section, for the purposes of this chapter, the President, as she did in Trinidad a few months ago, may from time to time make a proclamation declaring that a state of public emergency exists. That's 8.1. 8.2. A proclamation made by the President under subsection 1 shall not be effective unless it contains so and so, and etc. Now, we are here this afternoon, this morning, because the state of emergency declared by Her Excellency the President in July of 2025 is coming to an end. This government will not go back to a position where the criminals run the country. We have decided to pass an act. This is not a constitution. It's a piece of legislation. But my friend and all of his cronies on the front bench or the back bench referred me to the case of the Attorney General of Jamaica versus Douglas. Now, cases are important things. If I could just, I know it's late, but if I could just have a minute or two of your time to carry us through just a few sentences in the case to illustrate a point. At paragraph 2, that's just after paragraph 1. The judgment which is given by Mr. Justice McDonald Bishop says this: the government's utilization of states of public emergency. What's he talking about? He's talking about a state of public emergency. How do we know that? Because he says so. He's talking about a state of public emergency. There was nothing in anything that I said when I piloted the bill that said that I was talking to you about a state of emergency this afternoon. As a matter of fact, I had forgotten state of emergency behind me. I have a piece of legislation in front of me. And I don't know, there's something called, I know that I have some colleagues who are doctors on this side of the bench. I see one at the very end of the bench. There's something called, I'm told by my medical friends, folie à deux. And then there's something called folie au village. Well, I'm told, I'm not a doctor, that folie à deux is the kind of madness that takes place when two mad people speak to each other and they have a conversation. They alone know what they are talking about. But they carry on a conversation and then they do all sorts of things. And folie à village is when a group, not two, of people. So you now have, yes, something like that, a caucus. A group of people sit and they convince themselves that they are talking about something that the rest of us, well, we sit and say, well, we don't know what's going on here. We don't get involved. And I have sat here this evening for 6 hours. I'm a patient man, but I've sat here for 6 hours this evening and I've heard states of emergency, I've heard discriminatory states of emergency, I've heard about disproportionate states of emergency, I've heard all sorts of things about states of emergency. And my friend from Port of Spain, North St. Anne's West, actually carried me to a paragraph in the case. He said it was 62. Well, as a good student, I'm looking at 62. But I think it may have been 70. Paragraph 70.
You didn't know where it was?
No, I think so. I'm subject to correction. So if he's correct and I'm wrong, then I'm prepared to say 62. We won't fight over that. So I think it begins at 70, but it could be 69. I heard 62. Now, what it said is this. And he went on to discuss, because I think he took me to, he went on to discuss, he said it was my friend from Port of Spain North, St. Anne's West, he said he was talking about detention orders. But I saw detention orders written about in paragraph 74. Sorry. And at that point in time, again, I just read the first 2 lines because I know it's late. The judge says, it seems pertinent to note as a starting point that in evaluating the detention of an individual within the legal framework of a state of emergency, one cannot, so
Misrepresented your own newspaper.
So he says, so if I could just, it's late and it's bedtime for some people. So he says, in evaluating the detention of an individual within the legal framework of a state of emergency, one cannot divorce the legality of that detention from the constitutionality of it. But what I have to say, colleagues, is that wherever we were this for the last couple hours, let's try on this side of the bench of the House at any rate to purge our minds of that and to go back to the bill, the long title of which I read for you at the very beginning. So there are a couple differences between a state of emergency and the zones which forms the subject of the legislation that is before us this afternoon. The first one, and I hate to start at what I describe to be building blocks, those alphabet blocks that you see, A, B, C, and so on. But really, a state of emergency is constitutional. I think I said that already. The zones that I came here to talk about this afternoon, well, those are statutory. And that's why there's a piece of legislation before us. It's legislation, an act. That's what I started with. Now, there are a couple other things. The states of emergency, because they're in the Constitution provides for national level states of emergency. The zones that I thought I brought here this afternoon, well, they only focus on specific communities and specifically defined areas. Now, in the case that my colleague referred to, AG versus Douglas, what the court, first of all, the decision had absolutely nothing to do with zones. So let's just get that out of the way. So when they brought the case up, let's just describe that as part of that thing that I spoke about, the folie thing. Folie à viage or folie à deux or trois or quatre or whatever it is. So when they looked at the AG versus Douglas, that case held, and it held this and this alone, that the repeated use of what? States of emergency as a normal crime-fighting tool is unconstitutional. That's what the decision of the court was. Now, the Court of Appeal, well, it's not it's a full court, 3 judges, but different court system. they're not in the Code of Appeal. But they have not ruled that the use of zones is unconstitutional. Okay? So, and I dislike coming to the Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago and in essence carrying on a class that I have carried on for, I mean, the rest, all of my life, I've been trying to run away from the University of the West Indies teaching law. And I mean, I had a teacher, a teacher sitting next to me. And I think my teacher knows that I was pelting away from the Faculty of Law. But here I am this afternoon, tonight, this morning, trying to teach the difference between a piece of legislation, the Constitution, a decision on the Constitution, and the fact that there is no decision on a statute. So, colleagues, I just want you all to understand that for us to begin, right? Now, just one more point, if you all will indulge me. The comment was made that the Constitution, the bill, whatever it is, they describe it as, that its provisions breach the separation of powers. And that is because my colleague said, well, it's the executive declaring the state of emergency. Well, I think the lawyers on this side, the Prime Minister just sent me a note to remind me. I am sure the member for Sama Barataria, the member for St. Joseph, the member for Tabakit, and others, just some of us might know that the executive is, in our system, comprised of, yes, the president, but all of us who sit. Okay, I didn't want to put it like that. You know, I'm just trying to get us out of here at a decent time. But the member for St. Augustine is saying something which I think is correct, okay? So that the Prime Minister is part of the executive when she sits at the head of the cabinet. As is the president. The president is the head of the executive. The Prime Minister, I don't think, has decided a case in the High Court. I don't think that she sits above the High Court or Court of Appeal judges. She's not, let's just try to do it by process of elimination. She's not the head of the judiciary. I think we have a head of the judiciary. I think I read that somewhere in the newspaper that there is a new Chief Justice. I might have seen that somewhere. And that's called the judiciary. The legislature is another arm. And then there's the executive. So to say that, you know, well, the state of emergency that the president is okay to issue, to sign off on, that for some reason or the other, a piece of legislation which says the Prime Minister is not okay to sit and say, well, okay, there's a problem in this community because of a separation of powers, is a nonsense argument. Now, so we are back to the constitutionality of the bill. And I say the bill, not the Constitution. So we're not dealing with the constitutionality of the Constitution, which is a nonsense in itself. The constitutionality of the bill. I've given the arguments. The law now is Surat and Suraj proportionality. We did not need to stick a special majority certificate on this piece of legislation. Minister Hussein is saying yes. And that is true. Because the Privy Council now says to us, and Mr. Arawi was one of the architects of that. Every second word out his mouth was Suraj, and every third word out his mouth was Suraj. Only two cases. There are two separate cases. Two separate cases. Okay. But in those cases, Baroness Hale said, listen, govern yourself. Just do it in proportional terms. But you know what? We stuck a special majority certificate on this piece of legislation because we want them to agree with us and to pass the legislation. We want this to be their only crime-fighting tool in the last 10 years. Because really and truly, all that they have done this evening, tonight, this morning, is to tell us why this will not work. And you know what? They went as far as to say that they drafted a bill this time, So let's forget the folia, whatever. They drafted a bill in 2017. They drafted a bill in 2017 to deal with localized states of emergency. And one of my colleagues on the other side said, well, you all shouldn't take any great pleasure from that, we did it first. I have news for him. That's been kicking around for about 20 years. Because I happen to have been Attorney General before, and I saw in the National Security Council precisely that sort of legislation. And you're looking now at 2005, 2006. Okay? So that's a bill to declare parts of Trinidad and Tobago areas where you need special attention. After riots, sometime under their tenure, they set up a study group led by Mr. Watkins, I think the member for Port of Spain South might be familiar with that.
Don't take anything
there was a recognition that certain parts of Trinidad needed certain specialized attention. Now, I'm not saying that for a second that specialized attention extended to the type of attention that we think it requires. But I make no apologies for piloting this piece of legislation. It is hogwash to say that there is anything that is racist about this. I would never. The member for Toko Sandy Grandi said he would never be a part of anything that discriminates. And the Prime Minister, who is sitting on my left, I know the Prime Minister for over 30 years, would never be a part of any legislation in this country that discriminates against any group of people. All that we are determined to do, and we said it on the campaign trail, all that we are determined to do is to return to Trinidad and Tobago law and order. And that is not old talk and reasons why this constitution thing might not work, and reasons why this might be difficult, and reasons why this. No, if they are difficult, we do the difficult things precisely because they are difficult and hard, but because they need to be done. It's not going to be easy to fix this country. It's not going to be easy to turn this country around from a decade of cozying up to the criminal elements in every institution of the state, in the URP, in the CPEP, and in their own private dealings. Where every Monday morning they were hopping on a train, on an airplane, going God alone knows where, to do whatever to break sanctions. Madam Deputy Speaker, the bill before the House is the government's attempt to establish zones, and those zones will be the zones in which we will concentrate to eradicate the scourge of violent crime in this community. With those few words, I beg to move.
Honorable members, the question is that a bill entitled An Act to Provide for Special Measures for Upholding and Preserving the Rule of Law, Public Order, Citizen Security, and Public Safety within certain geographically defined areas of Trinidad and Tobago and for other related matters be now read a second time. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those against say no. I think the ayes have it.
A bill entitled, An Act to Provide for Special Measures for Upholding and Preserving the Rule of Law, Public Order, Citizen Security, and Public Safety within certain geographically defined areas of Trinidad and Tobago and for other related matters.
Honorable Attorney General.
Madam Deputy Speaker, in accordance with Standing Order 681, I beg to move that the Law Reform Zones of Special Operations, Special Security and Community Development Measures Bill 2026 be committed to the Committee of the Whole to be considered clause by clause.
Honorable members, the question is that the Law Reform Zones of Special Operations, Special Security and Community Development Measures Bill 2025 be committed to the Committee of the Whole to be considered clause by clause. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those against say no. I think the ayes have it. This House shall now go into the Committee of the Whole to consider the bill clause by clause.
Clauses 1 to 28.
The question is that clauses 1 to 28 stand a part of the bill. The question is that clauses 1 to 28 now stand a part of the bill. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those against say no. No. I think the ayes have it. Clauses 1 to 28 now stand a part of the bill.
The schedule.
The question is that the schedule stand a part of the bill. The question is that the schedule now stand a part of the bill. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those against say no. No. I think the ayes have it. The schedule now stands part of the bill.
The preamble.
The question is that the preamble be approved. The question is that the preamble to the bill be approved. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those against say no. No. I think the ayes have it. Honorable members, the question is that the bill now be reported to the House. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those against say no. No. I think the ayes have it. The bill will now be reported to the House. Honorable Attorney General.
Just. Madam Deputy Speaker, I wish to report that the law reform Zones of Special Operations, Special Security and Community Development Measures, Bill 2026, was considered in the Committee of the Whole and approved without amendment. I now beg to move that the House agree with the committee's report.
Honorable members, the question is that this House agree with the committee's report on the law reform, Zones of Special Operations, Special Security and Community Development Measures Bill 2026. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Any against say no. No. I think the ayes have it. Honorable Attorney General.
No division. Okay. Madam Deputy Speaker, I beg to move that a bill entitled An Act to Provide for Special Measures for Upholding and Preserving the Rule of Law, Public Order, Citizen Security, and Public Safety within certain geographically defined areas of Trinidad and Tobago and further related matters be now read a third time and passed.
Honorable members, the question is that a bill entitled An Act to Provide for Special Measures for Upholding and Preserving the Rule of Law, Public Order, Citizen Security, and Public Safety within certain geographically defined areas of Trinidad and Tobago and for other related matters be now read a third time and passed. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those against say no. No. I think the ayes have it. This bill requires 3/5 majority.
Mr. Padara?
Yes.
Mrs. Mr. Essie?
Yes.
Mr. Tanku?
Yes.
Ms. John?
Yes.
Dr. Munilal?
Yes.
Mr. Lee?
Yes.
Mr. Hussain?
Aye.
Ms. Amin?
Yes.
Mr. Alexander?
Yes.
Mr. Maraj?
Yes.
Ms. Mohit?
Yes.
Mr. Sturge?
Yes.
Dr. Bodo?
Yes.
Dr. Daulat?
Yes.
Mr. Morris?
Yes.
Ms. Benjamin?
Yes.
Mr. Sobers?
Yes.
Mr. Watts?
Yes.
Dr. Sicharan?
Yes.
Mr. Kiza?
Yes.
Mr. Elder?
Yes.
Mrs. Sam,
Yes.
Mr. Narayan Singh,
Yes.
Dr. Rupnarayan,
Yes.
Dr. Gozain,
Yes.
Mr. Thomas,
Yes.
Mr. Sampson,
Yes.
Mr. Gonzalez,
No.
Mrs. Beckles, from
No.
Sin. Mr. Imbed,
No way.
Dr. Gadsby-Dolly,
No.
Mr. Young, SC,
No.
Mr. Dino Breaker,
No.
Mr. Scotland,
No.
Mr. Manin,
No.
Mr. Marcel,
No.
Mr. Devines,
No.
Mr. Ramin,
No.
Madam Deputy Speaker, the result of the division is as follows. 27 members voted in favor for, 11 members voted against, there were no abstentions.
Honorable members, with a division of 27 members voting for, 11 members voting against, and 0 abstentions, the motion for the third reading of the law reform, Zones of Special Operations, Special Security and Community Development Measures, Bill 2026 is approved.
A bill entitled, An Act to Provide for Special Measures for Upholding and Preserving the Rule of Law, Public Order, Citizen Security, and Public Safety within certain geographically defined areas of Trinidad and Tobago, and for other related matters.
Members, we are now reverting to an earlier matter.
Papers.
Leader of the House.
Thank you kindly, Madam Deputy Speaker. Madam Deputy Speaker, I have the honor to lay the following paper in the name of the Minister of Transport and Civil Aviation, the Motor Vehicles and Road Traffic Amendment to the 9th Schedule, number 4, Order 2025. Thank you kindly, Madam Deputy Speaker.
Leader of the House.
Madam Deputy Speaker, it will be remiss of me if the government doesn't recognize your first solo stint of presiding over the House. And thank you and congratulate you for presiding with such alacrity, decisiveness, and strength. Madam Deputy Speaker, I beg to move that this House do now adjourn to a date to be fixed.
Thank you, Leader of the House. Honorable members, the question is that this House do now adjourn to a date to be fixed. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any against say no. The ayes have it. This House do now stand adjourned to a date to be fixed.